Welcome back into the Horseshoe, ladies and gentlemen, for the Monday after Ohio State 38, Michigan State 3, the 40 vet Tim May. He was here on Saturday night to watch that all unfold, as was Andy Backstrom and me, Spencer Holbrook. Fellas, I'm not going to lie to you. The second half was an absolute yawner. I mean, you want to talk about a boring half of football.
That's the way you want it, though.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. catches a long pass, 57 yards, to start the second half, and then all of a sudden Ohio State kicks a field goal. And from there, they let off the gas, and Ryan Day didn't seem to mind that, which I think is on purpose because he was talking about not letting off the gas at times early in the year, but now that you're getting closer to the Michigan game, I don't think you can have that same mindset. So all in all, I thought it was a great performance from the Buckeyes. Tim, you just rewatched the game. What say you?
The first act of that play was a two-act play. The first act of the play was dynamic, was robust, at times breathtaking. The second act, like you said, was a yawner. You know, a lot of people lined up and left the stadium in the second half because it was cold.
Yep.
Kind of like it is right now. I feel like I'm sitting in the produce drawer of a refrigerator as we're standing here. It's supposed to get up to 60 today. We'll see if it does. But he wanted a fast start. I'm talking about Ryan Day did. He got it. He wanted his defense to play over the top in that first half especially. He got it. They took Michigan State's best shot, which isn't on a scale of 1 to 10 is about a 4, and handled it. And so they won that game, especially the first half the way you expected them to. I think it's a good harbinger headed forward.
Rewatching the game, I thought third down, especially in the first half, was really great for Ohio State. They were 5 of 6 on third down in the first half, and pretty much 4 of those 6 plays were Marvin Harrison Jr. And you know, Michigan State, just like everyone else this year, tried to double-team Marvin Harrison Jr., but I thought it was really great by Kyle McCord and Marvin to basically have this chemistry where there would be times where Marvin would just kind of sit down on the route and not even go into the double coverage and kind of turn back in just for Kyle McCord to fit the ball in before he even had to face.
Throw it where they ain't. Throw it where they ain't, I think is what Yogi Berra would say.
Yeah, finding that little window there between the two defensive backs or sometimes before both of them. And I thought that was especially effective. And, you know, Marvin talked about it after the game, like, yeah, these guys have played since high school together, but there's a difference between playing together in high school and playing together in college. And I think that you're starting to see that chemistry and rapport taking off at the college level. It just takes a little bit of time. And I think that now it's really starting to click.
You want to see a young man dominate a game, go click on some of the St. Joe's prep days when Marvin Harrison Jr. was there and just boom.
Or just watch him play against Penn State.
Yeah,
because he's done that the last couple of years.
Or even the Saturday night here.
Yeah, with that touchdown. I think it was right here, actually, to Marvin Harrison Jr. in the end zone. Right about here.
Yeah.
That was a great ball. What I want to talk about, though, is the throw to Cade Stover, because I thought that was my favorite play on the offensive side the entire game, because Marvin Harrison Jr. was getting double teamed, but that safety was really trying to split the baby there between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Cade Stover, and whoever Kyle McCord threw to, he was going to try to be there for it because they were in pretty close proximity. Kyle looks at Marvin, and then automatically puts his eyes right on Cade and throws the back shoulder so the safety couldn't get there in time while he was trying to double team Marvin Harrison Jr. It was a perfect throw. It was one of the most mature throws I've seen Kyle McCord make all year, because that's not a throw that he, with confidence, would have planted and driven on early in the year, and I think it shows a lot that he did it.
Deja vu of that throw he had to Emeka Egbuka at the 1-yard line at Notre Dame on that third and long, 3rd and 19.
I could not be more impressed with the way that Kyle McCord played, and I'm really glad, to be honest. Sometimes after performances like that, guys who struggle but then play well, I'll go on Twitter and just type their name in and see what people are saying about them. I'm really glad that Ohio State fans and others around the country kind of realized, okay, maybe Kyle McCord's starting to turn a corner, because that's certainly what it looked like on Saturday night. And I'm excited to see what he can do against Minnesota after that performance on Saturday night.
And what'd you expect? I mean, you know, remember I asked Ryan about this earlier in the week about a quarterback making these kind of progressions, especially a first-year starting quarterback. Well, meaning going up and down kind of like a stock price, but still kind of like moving up. And boy, Saturday night was just a straight line up. I mean, a diagonal line up. There was very little to ask of Kyle McCord. I think that he could have done better in that game. I don't know if you agree or not.
Yeah.
And then the toughness factor, like that one little, what we talked about, that little desperation, little shovel flip to Cade Stover when Kyle got popped there early in the game, got up limping, but stayed in there and kept flinging it. I mean, you know, he took a big step forward, I think. Consider the opposition. I absolutely do. But he took a step forward in that game. I mean, we've been praising J.J. McCarthy and all these other quarterbacks around the country for great games they've had against inferior opponents. Mm-hmm. And I thought Kyle McCord looked as good as he should look against that kind of opponent, I guess is the point. You made that point on Saturday night. He was putting balls on the money. That's a big thing, no matter who you're playing.
I mean,
he's putting balls on the money, and that transcends as you head forward.
Some of those throws would have been completed against the 85 Bears.
Correct.
Those were, when you throw a perfect pass, it doesn't matter who you're playing, that's a perfect pass.
As long as you and the other guy are on the same wavelength too.
The only throw that I think he truly missed was the other one to Marvin Harrison Jr., the attempted fourth touchdown where they ended up kicking a field goal, where he just put a little short, but that's okay.
He kind of fell back on that one and just kind of,
So what did you think of Kyle's performance after watching a second time, Andy?
Definitely his best performance of the year. I mean, you could argue the Notre Dame game was just his most clutch performance, but I felt like this was the most complete performance. And I think we've seen all these throws before, as Tim mentioned. I agree that one definitely felt like the Emeka Ibuka throw at the end of that game in Notre Dame. But this was the first time we've seen all these throws together, consecutively in one package.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most important thing because he struggled recently with turnovers, 0 turnovers. There were 0 sacks in this game. I felt like he had pretty good protection, but he also did a good job getting the ball out on time.
Yeah.
I felt like his awareness is heightened. You mentioned the shovel pass play. I felt like he had a good head on a swivel there to make that happen. Maybe earlier in the season he takes a sack in that play or fumbles even. So I thought that was an improvement there. And I mean, really aside from the one miss where, not even just the missed throw there, but he probably had Marvin wide open the previous play right before that for that 4th touchdown potential.
Yeah, remember we were yelling.
Yeah, and he went to Emeka over the middle.
We weren't yelling, we were discussing.
Pointing out that from our view, way up way.
Yeah, and that's where Emeka came off the field slowly.
Right, yeah. But of course that just can happen. But it was just, I thought, a great performance by him to be able to stick with it. He's been so calm and collected throughout this whole time. It can't be easy being the Ohio State quarterback. We talked about all offseason, the pressure that comes with being the guy under center here or in shotgun most of the time here. But I think he's just handled it really well. And even after the game, he said, we're peaking at the right time, which I think is so important because in any sport, but especially football, the weather gets cold, the games matter more, and you want to be playing your very best, and you want to be as healthy as possible. And I think Kyle McCord's ankle, he seems a little bit better on that. I felt like he looked the best he has on his ankle so far since the injury. And I think that he's playing his best ball right now, which is all you can ask for in November.
Hey, pressure, man. Just look around this place. Now imagine there's a person in every damn seat.
I know.
And they're living and dying on what you do. I mean, it still kind of gives you chills a little bit to think about playing in this kind of an arena, and they've only got one more game here on, this 2023 season. They're the number 1 team in the country. It's kind of cool.
Tim, before we start to move on here, because we're not, be honest, we don't need to really talk about exactly.
Have you not been honest?
Yeah.
To this point.
No, I'm going to be completely honest here. We don't really need to talk about Ohio State, Michigan State here, because it happened. It was a great half of football. Ohio State ran the clock out. We're not going to spend a ton of time on that because
Lincoln Keno's getting to play some.
I'm getting ready to throw it to you there, big guy.
Okay.
Give me a second here. Tim, if there was any young guys who stood out to you from Saturday night on the rewatch, did you have any young guys who stood out with you? Wink, wink, nudge,
Johnny
nudge.
Thurman is about this tall, so he always stands out. So he got to play significantly for the first time and catch passes.
Yep.
Boy, if they could just bring that along. I've been talking about that since the first time I saw him in March, right? When we saw spring football.
Yeah, you haven't shut up about it.
No. I just you can just see some guys, unless things screw up between now and then, injury or whatever, this guy's going to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, you can
I
see
agree.
it coming, man. If you can't, then you're watching the wrong sport.
Hey, I was watching another game, Tim. Jelani looks like a young Texas player. Jatavian Sanders, the tight end.
Yeah.
Jelani reminds me of him. Go watch that.
Darnell Sanders, or where that guy's name was from Georgia too.
Oh, Washington.
Darnell Washington. Maybe not quite as stocky, but he can get there.
Yeah.
But the key in this game was Lincoln Keno not only getting to go in and not with a mop in his hand, but ready to throw the football. That was vital for this team to get him some credible reps, in my opinion, throwing the football against an opponent, because he hasn't played all year. The freshman from Pierre,
There you go.
South Dakota. Pierre, South Dakota is the way it's spelled. I think it's still pronounced Pierre.
Nope.
Sausage and mushrooms, Pierre. That's from a commercial, a pizza commercial. I can't believe y'all didn't even catch that.
Nope.
But this guy but he was their backup quarterback on Saturday night. He might be their backup quarterback the rest of the season. We'll see how, because Devin Brown looked like he regressed, not progressed from the last time we saw him warming up against Rutgers. So that'll be interesting to watch, but it was vital to get this guy some live reps. You know, I'm sure nobody asked about it. I got the first question on Saturday night, and I wasn't going to ask about that of Ryan Day, but it'd be interesting this week to ask him about Lincoln Keno's and his progress, because I thought he looked the part. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I thought so. Andy, Lincoln Keno's, and then maybe a couple young guys who stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, small sample size, like 12 snaps, threw 3 passes, completed 2
12
of them.
snaps, yeah.
He could have had a touchdown there.
That throw was great.
To Jaden Bowden. Well, I think he could have put it a little bit more to the outside.
Yeah.
For a freshman, I thought the throw was good. Like, it was
Clearly
crisp.
got the arm talent. It's been fun watching before the games, just him kind of just uncork the deep ball, and he always runs a route for Kyle McCord will throw him a pass.
Yeah, that's a
right
tradition.
at the end of the warm-ups. Yeah.
Tradition around here.
And I think it's fun to watch him do that. He's clearly, he's a three-sport star coming out of high school, enrolled late here, like in June he came in, so he wasn't here in January. So his development has definitely been fun to watch just from that time to now. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Devin Brown situation is really interesting because, yes, he was barely doing anything in warm-ups. He was suited up, so I think he was technically available. That's why he wasn't listed on that injury report. And I'm curious, and we'll have to ask Ryan Day, and we'll see what he says, but it felt like maybe he suited up last week because Tristan Gebbia didn't seem to be too available. He wasn't really warming up in the Rutgers game. So maybe that was kind of a break glass in case of emergency. We need a third quarterback available, and maybe Lincoln was kind of like the backup for that game too.
Yeah.
And I think tonight, in a game where you have it in hand by the fourth quarter, you're playing a second quarterback, Lincoln was that guy, and Tristan seemed healthier. He was warming up this time. So,
but I'm just saying,
maybe, maybe it wasn't regression. Maybe it was just that they actually had a third quarterback healthy this time.
Right, but the point was those other 2 guys are banged up in one form or fashion, and why throw them out there? Like you said, why break the glass if you don't have to? But it was key because that could still be the case in 2 weeks. I mean, you got to, and the starting quarterback, left ankle, everybody knows all about Kyle McCord's situation. So, boy, you just, I'm sure they're knocking on wood. They've moved on, and it was really funny how they let Kyle McCord get him out of the mud hole down here on that drive, and then they put Lincoln in to drive the car.
Yeah,
student driver.
You don't want to put a true freshman quarterback as first action.
I know. I know. That was the point
and
I was
making. I thought it was really smart because everybody in the stadium who was still here wanted to see him.
Yeah.
We've all heard about him. We've all talked about him.
And you're also wondering why is Kyle McCord still in the game at that point? It's like, not wondering, but you knew why.
But once you get down to what was it, the 3-yard line or something, you're not just going to throw Lincoln. And I thought it was really smart because you don't want to have a mistake and then the confidence get rattled. So kudos to the coaching staff on that. Were there any other young guys that you guys thought? Because I have one. I thought
Calvin Simpson Hunt
from
Waxahachie, Texas.
There you go.
They filmed Tender Mercies, by the way, a good movie.
There you go.
Robert Duvall.
Okay. I thought Hero Canoe continues to take big steps forward. Do not be surprised if on November 25th you see Hero Canoe on the field on rundowns. Like Jaden
McKenzie.
He's playing well. Hero Canoe's starting to play well. Any others?
Jermaine Matthews continued to be impressive. He had a great tackle on special teams.
Until
Ohio State honored him as their special teams co-player of the game. He also had a nice pass breakup, which is when he seemed to jam his finger, and that's why Calvin Simpson Hunt came in to have that stop in the screenplay against Malik Carr, Michigan State's tight end. I thought that, there was a collection of guys that stood out, not only just young guys. Jahad Carter played 26 snaps in this game. I think that's noteworthy considering the safety situation at Ohio State right now.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Considering how he went out,
Yeah, we don't know the future of Lathan Ransom right now, when he'll be able to get back, if he'll be able to get back. I know that's more the boundary side, and we can see Jahad more at that nickel or free safety, but he can play anywhere, so just having him available is important after he got hurt against Penn State. So I think that is noteworthy. We saw Kai Stokes again a little bit. So like some of that defensive back depth that I think that we were a little bit unsure of if those guys would even play the rest of this year. I know obviously the circumstances of the game was in hand, but it's still noteworthy that if you need those guys,
Yeah.
they're available.
And Josh Proctor, of course, missed the game because he got that head bump at Rutgers. Head bump. He got sort of knocked out.
Yeah.
When he caused that interception that Jordan Hancock took back 93 yards for a touchdown. Those are Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom, two of their better tackling players, much less whether they're in the secondary or not. But I thought Ohio State, for the most part, handled things because you knew that you were going to get a steady diet of Nate Carter, which they sort of did. Michigan State had, it seemed like so few plays, it was hard to figure out really what they were up to. They got their backup quarterback in there because they're trying to save, the redshirt year for the one kid, and just that was a good game for Ohio State to show its dominance because it should have been dominant, and it was. That's where, like you said, that's enough said about that game. Clearly, Ryan Day kind of hinted he wasn't that impressed with the second team offensive line play.
Yeah.
And, but knock on wood, they haven't had to go into that well this year.
The other guy that I wanted to make sure that we just touched on, not really talked about, Malik Hartford, who started the game, played a lot. Looked okay at times, looked pretty timid at times, but you know what? He's putting a lot of weight on. He's still trying to learn to play with that weight. He's trying to play at a college level. He talked about how there's just bigger guys flying at you at this level than there is in high school. And to be with the first team defense that's flying around, putting hats on the ball and going pretty hard there, I would imagine that's a pretty tough spot for him to be in. So I'm not going to excuse it because you're at Ohio State. There's no excuses here. But for a true freshman, I didn't think he played terribly.
I've got my hand up. Should I start doing that?
No.
Put my hand up when I got something to say?
No. It would always be up.
I watched the replay, like y'all did. And stuff. I still don't think that was pass interference.
No.
If anything, it was offensive shove-off. But, the kind of, you're a young guy and you're out there playing and you're feeling pretty good the way you're playing, and you get like this bogus call against you.
Yeah.
That's got to bum you out and kind of take away a little bit of your edge, That's why I felt for him on that. It's almost like in the NFL where they call stuff on a rookie they don't call on a veteran.
Yeah, exactly. Andy, final thoughts from Ohio State, Michigan State?
Yeah, I guess just one more thing on the Malik front. I think, coverage-wise, he'll be fine. He was targeted 3 times, only gave up 2 catches for 3 total yards. The DPI, that's going to happen. Those DPI and holding penalties, Davis and Igbenogson will tell you first. Those are going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't think that's a red alert. I think more of the tackling stuff will just come over time as he puts more mass on. As you mentioned, Tim, Lathan Ransom, Josh Proctor, they've been around for a while. They're sure tacklers.
And they're there, man.
That's hard to replace.
Yeah.
But I thought Malik Hartford, all things considered, is continuing to improve.
And one of the quick, Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, Sonny Styles. We talked about it after the game. Great at strong safety at the boundary side. I think I asked him, did you like it better? He said, well, in different ways. There are things he can bring out. There's physicality we see more. He's less tested in coverage, I think is good for him because he did struggle a little bit at times covering, some of those slot receivers earlier in the season. So I think it's a good spot for him.
I do too.
And I thought defensively there were a lot of bright spots that kind of, at least I didn't notice them because I was so focused on the offensive showcase on Saturday. I thought Cody Simon, I'll say it again, I thought he was impressive. I think it's really handy for a team like this to have essentially a second middle linebacker you can pull upon that Jim Knowles is super confident in to basically run this defense.
Yeah.
And I thought that Denzel Burke being back was noteworthy as well for this defense, just considering that he, in the beginning of the season, was probably the most improved player.
Absolutely. And back to Sonny real quick. The things that impressed me about Sonny so far is when they've asked him to do something a little bit different, a little exotic on whatever, he gets there.
Yep.
I mean, he gets right into the middle of it. And, you can't always say that about everybody. So Sonny Styles, man, all the hype that we've been throwing around about him, I mean, it's real, and it's only going to get better, it looks.
There was a game.
Like.
There was a game before Ohio State. There was a game before Ohio State, Michigan State, that we probably should just touch on a little bit. That has huge ramifications for this program as well as the Big Ten in general. Michigan 24, Penn State 15. I guess we could say the Monday after Michigan 24, Penn State 15. Michigan 30 straight run plays, got that pass interference in the middle of all of that. So they did attempt to pass, but it was negated, and they still got a first down out of it. Neither team moved the ball particularly well. Michigan only had 116 total yards in the second half, so they didn't completely just bully Penn State, but they did enough to earn a win on the road. Penn State had a insanely stupid 4th down try from the 30-yard line. In which
Excuse me, I fell asleep.
They gave Michigan the ball at the 30-yard line and allowed them to just run into the end zone for a touchdown to make it 24-9. The Penn State offense is still completely horrendous. Tim, other than that, how was the rest of the play, Mrs. Lincoln? But, like, what'd you think? Because we're going to have to talk about this a lot here in the next couple weeks.
Well, here's the thing that happened on Saturday. Ohio State versus Michigan, barring upsets, an upset by Maryland this week over Michigan, or Minnesota, which got drilled by Purdue.
Yeah.
Minnesota is coming to Ohio Stadium extremely banged up. I mean, they've got, like I said on TV last night, they got linebackers you kind of haven't even heard of. They're getting pressed into action, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is, Michigan beating Penn State has taken that fifth rung tiebreaker out of the out of the equation for the Big Ten East representative to the Big Ten championship game. Speaking of snoozers, where they'll play probably Iowa.
Yep.
But anyway, I digressed again. Penn State fires its offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcich, who was here at one point several years ago, thinking that was the problem. We'll see if it was. They had receivers not open. We were talking about that before we started this. We weren't impressed with their receivers when they were here from the standpoint of big-time threats, although their one last touchdown was they hit some big passes on that, you know. But Drew Aller, bless his heart, I don't think that was a miss by Ohio State in the recruiting realm.
No.
Like a lot of people were portraying it before they played here a few weeks ago. But going for two after that first touchdown, and then going for two after their second touchdown, I am just mind-boggled, if whatever could be boggled. I am that about the thinking there and chasing points when you don't have to chase points, especially the last one where you kick the extra point and you're within a score in a two-point conversion of Michigan. It just blows my mind. You just see these weird decisions by Penn State in the end of games or in crucial situations that just blow your mind, like, what the hell is going on?
That's big,
But
James.
the bottom line is, it's Ohio State, Michigan now. Ohio State, Michigan won without its head coach. Its interim head coach cried in the postgame interview like there has been this great.
Jim Harbaugh is dead.
There's been this, but there's been this great injustice put on Michigan.
We don't need to get into all of that.
No, but there hasn't been a great injustice.
I know. We don't need to get into all of that.
Why not? Everybody else is talking about it.
Because we'd be here for 3 hours if we talked about the injustice.
But this idea that Michigan is a victim is starting to really nauseate me. Well, you know, the game will be the game. The outcome of the game will be the game. If there's vengeance involved, whatever, who knows? Who cares? It's all based on fallacy, most of it seems. But that Michigan is a victim here just nauseates you. That's the card that's being played. So I think November 25th in the Big House is going to be a very interesting day in Big Ten history.
What'd you see from Michigan, Andy, that makes you say, that's interesting?
I don't think I learned anything new about Penn State. they are who we saw in this stadium. Michigan,
you let them off the hook.
Yeah, Denny Green.
Yeah.
I think that Michigan, though, I thought it was impressive the way they adjusted in that game. There was a lot of pressure from Penn State's defensive line early in that game. Abdul Carter, Adisa Isaac, Chop Robinson were all pretty prevalent in the early part of that game. Sherrod Moore, interim head coach of Michigan, give him some credit. Adjusted there. He's, manages that offensive line. He trusted his guys up front, put in some heavy packages. They just started running the football down Penn State's throat, and from that point forward, it was a different game. So I thought that was a great adjustment from an interim head coach. I think that the thing that worries me the most from the Ohio State perspective for the game on November 25th is, can Ohio State handle this Michigan rushing attack, which previously was not explosive this season, but we saw for really the first time against a quality opponent, Blake Corum kind of exploded on Saturday.
Yeah.
He looked like the guy who was a Heisman Trophy candidate last year, and I thought that was definitely noteworthy. Donovan Edwards had a couple good runs as well, and then maybe most importantly, J.J. McCarthy, although he only threw 8 passes, I believe, in the game, he was dangerous with his legs, which if you're an Ohio State fan, you need to be a little bit worried about. He scored in this end zone last year in the game, and also, Ohio State had a hard time against Rutgers tracking down Gavin Wimsatt at times. just we've seen even last year there were times in which, whether it was Taulia Tagovailoa or other quarterbacks, they had a hard time getting him down. So I think that if you're looking at this Michigan team, you're trying to figure out, well, what's the biggest threat? It's that rushing attack.
Yeah.
And maybe J.J. McCarthy.
I want to say something, though. When we were standing here several weeks ago and rehashing the Penn State game, Ohio State's win over Penn State, that night after the afternoon after the game when we were standing here, and then the next Monday, that was a huge win by Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge win by Michigan on Saturday at Penn State.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not discounting. The tears were probably tears of relief more for Sherrone Moore than anything else, but they just kind of left left me hollow. But the bottom line is what we saw from that game, and what is going to be imperative. This is going to sound like basic football 101, but what fell off for Ohio State last year when they had the lead at halftime on Michigan and blew it. When they score, you got to go score. I mean, there's and that's what happened. The Ohio State offense really fell off the beam in the second half of that game and didn't keep up its end of the bargain. And that's what's got to be different about this game. We'll get into that next week, I'm sure. But that's what Michigan just knew it was the bully on the block on Saturday and took care of business.
I will say that I was impressed with the way Penn State defended Michigan in the back end. And I think that gives me a little bit of confidence in the way that Ohio State's going to be able to defend. Kobe King and Kalen King did a pretty good job. Roman Wilson didn't get anything going. I know that they didn't throw the ball in the second half, but when they were trying
to threw it 8 times, man.
When they were trying to throw the ball, is all I'm saying. The pass rush got to them.
Okay.
And I don't think that Michigan's going to just be able to line up and run it 40 times on Ohio State.
I agree.
I think Jim Knowles is going to have better plans than Manny Diaz did, because Manny Diaz runs Ask Madden Blitz, Ask Madden Engage 8, Ask Madden Blitz. And so I think Jim Knowles is a little smarter than that, especially against an opponent that he knows he has to prepare 365 days a year for. So I'm interested to see if the wide receivers, if Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson and Tyler Morris or whoever it is in that Michigan receiving corps is going to be able to get open, because I think Jordan Hancock is better than Kobe King. I think Denzel Burke is better than Kalen King. And I think the safety play at Ohio State is a little bit better than what Penn State has. So that's going to be one of the battles that I'm going to be watching. And I would have loved to have seen Michigan try to pass it a little bit more, but they didn't need to. And there's something to be said about doing what you need to do and not what you want to do. And I'm sure they wanted to get J.J. McCarthy involved in the passing game. Didn't need to. I was impressed with Michigan, but I also see a couple ways that I think Ohio State might be able to get an advantage on the Wolverines. And then it's just going to come down to, can you stop the run to be able to get yourself into those advantages and make J.J. McCarthy beat you with his arm? Because last year, he didn't even really beat him with his arm. He just happened to find wide open receivers that Ohio State just let roam free.
Correct.
And he threw a 6-yard hitch route that turned into a touchdown because a former corner wasn't interested in tackling that game. So, yeah.
It's funny, when I played Madden against my 2 sons occasionally, my only stipulation was I got to be the Colts, and I had either ran Edgerrin James or threw the ball with Peyton Manning and just wiped the floor over those 2
Marvin Harrison.
Huh?
To Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
I mean, I only ran like 8 different plays.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, the game on November 25th is going to come down to situational football, and I think the red zone is a big area that is always an emphasis, but it's going to be probably deciding the game in Ann Arbor. And I think that Michigan's red zone defense, they haven't had to play a lot of it because they don't let people into the red zone. But Penn State did get there, and Michigan locked down for the most part. And this Ohio State team, aside from the last 2 weeks, has really struggled in the red zone this year. Now, can they carry over this momentum they built against Rutgers and now Michigan State in the red zone, scoring touchdowns instead of field goals, into Minnesota game, into the Michigan game? That's the question, because if they're kicking field goals, it's going to be a hard time beating that Michigan team because they're finishing drives. Mm-hmm. They finish out drives most of the time with touchdowns, a lot of times because of that rushing attack, that offensive line. And I think that Ohio State, as Tim said, has to go toe-to-toe with Michigan. When they score, you got to match that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the red zone and all those little things like special teams, I mean, there were even a few more mistakes on special teams that we didn't talk about, but against Michigan State. So all those tiny things in situational football is going to be so key at Michigan.
And so wrapping up, Ohio State plays Minnesota this week.
So, about that, Ohio State 1-9 against the spread in its last 10 games the week before the Michigan game. Ryan Day 1-2 against the spread. in games before the Michigan game. That's not, I don't want to talk gambling on this show, but like it does kind of paint the picture of the week before the Michigan game is the week before the Michigan game and nothing more. You can, if you've got like a Penn State or a good opponent the week before, like in 2015 they had Michigan State in here the week before the Michigan game and they lost. But that was a good Michigan State team. You're not talking about that with this Minnesota team. Kyle McCord starting to hit his stride and Minnesota just gave up 49 to Purdue. Marvin Harrison Jr. is Marvin Harrison Jr., and Minnesota just gave up 49 to Purdue. Travion Henderson is a good running back, and Minnesota just gave up 49 to Purdue. So we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about Minnesota, but we can't just gloss over it entirely because
a whole week to talk about them.
Yeah, we've got all week. So now we're in here for the Monday after. It's starting to get a little sunshine.
The sun has come up.
Starting to sweat a little bit because I dressed for the cold. Now it's starting to get a little warmer.
Me too.
This is the Monday after. Ohio State 38, Michigan State 3. Not a lot to talk about, but enough to talk about to come provide the coverage where we do at lettermenrow.com for all year round. You can get that coverage for $1 for your first month, and we'll talk about pricing after that. And by then, you won't even care about the pricing because you'll love the coverage from the 40-year vet Tim May, from Andy Backstrom, from me, Spencer Holbrook, Alex Lightman, Matt Parker over on the recruiting side doing a great job. Matt's photos on Saturday night were incredible. Good job, Matt.
Yeah, no kidding.
Go check those out at lettermenrow.com.
Underrated young man, Matt Parker.
Absolutely, a strapping gentleman.
How come we didn't talk about special teams? How come we didn't talk about that punt thing? Well, we're going to find about that because nobody asked about that either because it was a 38-3 win.
We got all week to talk about it, Tim.
I know, but man alive. Yeah.
The Monday after, Ohio State 38, Michigan State 3 is in the books. Tim May, again, the 40-year vet. Andy Backstrom, me, Spencer Holbrook. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com where we cover the Buckeyes all year round in the build-up to Ohio State, Michigan, November 25th, Ohio State, Minnesota, November 18th. We'll see you guys in the horseshoe for that one, and we'll see you guys in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday for Ryan Day press conference.